Hello community! OpenAI has given us a new methodology to optimize our LLMs with reinforcement learning by human feedback, now combined here with force sampling beam search. Let's have a look at this. Here's the publication June 27, Finding GPT's Mistakes with GPT-4. And it's called a Critique GPT. And you say, okay, I understand. So I have a basic GPT and then I have a Critique GPT, maybe a higher value GPT that says, hey, I can improve your answer by, and beautiful. So I have a more powerful LLM, a less powerful LLM. But the question is, so why do I run two AIs in parallel? And where's the learning happening? Because even if you say this is here n times, there is no learning happening. So a Critique GPT must be something different. Now, let me be absolutely clear. A Critique GPT is not for you. If you are a normal AI user, a Critique GPT is something very special. Let's have a look. If you train your GPT, GPT-4 or whatever, you have a pre-training phase, then you have the fine-tuning phase, then you have the alignment phase with the reinforcement learning from human feedback, and finally we have our perfect little ChatGPT that we can use as an AI agent with memory, with planning, with tool use. Beautiful. Now, Critique GPT is now very focused here on the alignment phase, on the reinforcement learning, on human feedback. So whatever human feedback comes in, Critique GPT now helps the human in their feedback to evaluate, for example, the performance here of the alignment process. So the critique that GPT is doing is more or less helping / criticizing the human performance on this particular task. And OpenAI is here really clear, and let me give you two sentences here from OpenAI. LLMs have already passed the point at which typical humans can consistently evaluate the AI output without help. And OpenAI goes on and says, hey, this has been evidenced since demonstration of their strong performance on PhD level science question. So we see here clearly that OpenAI has now faced with a problem. The typical human intelligence is not enough anymore to further train the AI system, because now they would need PhD level science knowledge. So you see the typical human, and this is here the normal human, this is exactly what I see. If I look in my mirror here in the morning in my bathroom, yeah, this is me. But now we need here for our AI training, we need now a PhD level science super perfect human. Now, isn't this beautiful? And here we have now the official research paper, LLM Critiques Help Catch LLM Bugs. A very innocent title by OpenAI, but read it because there is some hidden treasure in this article. But what it means, in the old times, like 2 years ago, when OpenAI was using here reinforcement learning by human feedback for their normal ChatGPTs, they could go here to the global south, and they had thousands and tens of thousands of people sitting at home, working mechanical Turk, and doing here and integrating here their intelligence in the LLM models. But now OpenAI is faced that they need a better performance. They need now PhD level science knowledge. And you know what? Our PhD students here are not willing to work here for a minimal earn. So this can now get quite expensive, but it has another interesting perspective. Let me explain. Now, you might say, hey, why not just borrow more data respecting all legal requirements from the internet? Well, more and more AI-generated content is now flooding the free internet, and this is completely mixed with human text. So the more and more the internet is now polluted by not so well-performant AI-generated content, we do not have PhD-level science performance from the free internet. And so it is beautiful that now our big AI tech companies have now deals with news agency. So we have there our reporter, and they write here let's say, PhD level science reports here on news, on politics, on economics, so whatever. So those are now the new data sources for the AI companies to further pre-train, to further evolve here the training data sets that they need to be accurate and up to date. Now, ChatGPT here is nice, and if our Critique GPT here would only work here on the human feedback, that's nice, but OpenAI decided here to invent something new, a new mechanism. Force sampling beam search. So what is it? It's an advanced technique here to optimize here the generation of critiques by AI model, specifically, and this is now we have quality and relevance of the model output. So this is here a delicate balance between the comprehensiveness of the critique and minimizing here some spurious claims such as hallucination or nitpicks. Of course, we have here the inclusion of a reward model because we go here with the classical reinforcement learning by human feedback from OpenAI, PPO. So great. For my little green grasshoppers, beam search explained here, reward models explained in this video. And then there's another sentence by OpenAI that really makes me listen. OpenAI says, hey, whether or not here reinforcement learning by human feedback maintains its dominant status as the primary means by which LLMs are post-trained into useful AI assistants, we still need to answer the question of whether particular model outputs are trustworthy. You know what this means? OpenAI tells us, hey, we don't trust our models, and they are absolutely correct with this statement. So OpenAI decides here, hey, here we take a very direct approach. We're training now models that help humans to evaluate models. And this is now kind of a fascinating nuance to this approach. Because look at this. We have now here a GPT-4 system that is doing some work. And then we have here human in the training phase that helps here, this GPT-4, to criticize here some answers, some performance of the GPT-4 system to become better. And then we have another GPT-4 system that helps, optimizes here the human performance so the humans can be better at optimizing the GPT-4 system. This is a configuration I have never been aware in this precision. So we have now AI systems with a sole task to improve the performance of humans. And if you understand that this is the main message here in the publication by AI finding GPT-4's mistake with GPT-4, they left out here, this is about the human trainers. You only have it here in the subheading to help human trainers. So now we have AI systems that help humans to increase their performance. And let's stay here. So machine AI systems now optimize or help humans to increase the human performance, to increase the human learning, a more cost-effective training process for humans since the machine learns now the human, and an increased fast, flexible learning. If somebody is really fast in learning, the machine just can accelerating here in the learning process based on individual progress here of the specific human. So hidden behind this is now, I think, a new generation here of GPT. Of course, officially it's only called a Critique GPT. But this GPT is now optimized to help humans optimize their performance. This is nice. Now, I will show some performance data, and here we have the rates of hallucinated problems and nitpicking here. And here given two examples on code with human inserted bugs into the code and on code with human detected bugs. But never mind, because you see the trend is almost identical. So let's have a look at this. We look at the text and say, we do find, says OpenAI, that the rate of nitpicking and hallucinated bugs is much higher for our models than for humans, though Critique GPT is able to substantially reduce this rate over the classical vanilla GPT. So here our Critique GPT has a better performance than the normal vanilla ChatGPT. And you see if you combine the Critique GPT now with the human expertise, we get even a better performance than only the Critique GPT, but only for the rates of hallucinated problems and nitpicking. Or, as in figure 7, here it is stated that the human-machine teams hallucinate and nitpick less than both the Critique GPT and the Chat GPT. Now, of course, you understand what is the goal here, that humans are very expensive compared to machines, well, whatever this means. So, if we can reduce the human cost in the equation, maybe the overall cost, if we improve the performance now, if we learn here these Critique GPT systems, whatever the humans learn, we have now a pattern recognition and pattern application machine that should perform quite well and be quite cost effective for an industrial application. Now, they also say that Critique GPT helps the human, now you know what it helps, to write more comprehensive critiques, more detailed critiques on other GPTs. And you might say, do we need this? Yes, we need this, because look here. I asked GPT-4 Omni to draw an old Roman galley with rowers under deck. And you see what happened in the understanding. The rowers are under the deck of the galley, but maybe not in the perfect configuration. So you see, yes, we need humans to correct our AI systems. But of course you might say, but wait, why we focus here in the alignment phase of our LLMs here only on reinforcement learning from human feedback? Because there are alternatives that we have as AI researcher. Yes, of course. And I have here videos where I show you here DPO, the direct preference optimization. We have here the code for DPO on Llama 2. I show you the complete new opportunities here. You have an FST plus a DPO. Now we have a combined ORPO, or you do this here on Onslaught, or we use here a Mamba, an S6 system, fine-tuned and DPO aligned. I give you the code, I show you the test. So there are alternatives, but OpenAI focuses here on its own methodology, reinforcement learning by human feedback, because this opens up here this optimization of the human. This is an interesting point. Also powerful reference model for real good alignment of your LLMs here, May 21st, 2024. You see here not only the reinforcement learning from human feedback, but if you remove the reward model from this, and we have DPO, IPO, and KTO, and they show you here the latest here, a trust region of those. And for my green grasshoppers here, you know what DPO, IPO, and KTO means. So interesting. So we have now new insights into this, but what is the main insight of the complete study? And you will say, hey, wait a second. Did you notice the inconsistency? And it took me a second, but yes. Now look here, we have one GPT system and we have another GPT system, and we have the human in the middle. The question is, how self-similar are those two LLMs? Because if it's identical here in the reinforcement learning from human feedback, I can have here a self-reference of this system to help the humans, and I don't need here to run two almost self-similar systems. So this system here has to be special. It has to be specially trained on its task. So let's have a look at how to do the training on the Critique GPT with reinforcement learning by human feedback. 5 simple steps. At first, we sample several critiques for each question-answer pair in the dataset. Then the human contractors rate here the attributes of the sample critiques, including also the overall quality. Then we train here classically the reward model to predict the human overall quality rankings. Plus, we optimize in the next step a policy against the reward model using the classical OpenAI PPO. And finally, we apply an inference time sampling strategy that, as I told you, they call force sampling beam search. If you want to learn more about how you optimize a policy against a reward model, all of this is explained in this video. So, now that we know what to do, we have to generate the dataset. How do we, with human contractors, generate this? Well, at first, simple. sample task and solution for ChatGPT data, and then you are tasked to insert some bugs into the code. Can be easy, different ways you can do this, beautiful. And then you have the critique comparison with a ranking of this. Very simple example, how you do here the training data. And then this, let's call it funny, bug-infested LLM learns now to detect those bugs given the specific prepared data set by the human contractors. So you see, this model now, our Critique GPT, is now really different here, especially in the alignment phase. But this LLM is nothing special because this LLM learns like any other LLM to recognize patterns and reproduce patterns, and this pattern is here to critique. Therefore, we can say those GPT systems are not at all self-similar because this has been specifically trained for one particular task to be here a very efficient critique GPT system to help the humans so that the humans are better in their productivity, in their performance per time interval, to critique here the reinforcement learning by human feedback for the classical ChatGPT. OpenAI also asked here the paying human contractors to rate here the model written critiques, but also had them review answers to write their own critiques. And those human contractors were drawn from a pool, and in average it took them about 50 minutes per example to write their critique for a Python-specific code example. So this is quite a long amount of time, and this is, if you think about a for-profit company, this is really expensive if you have several thousand people doing this. So if you can reduce now this time frame significantly with a critique LLM, you understand why a for-profit company is now interested to implement here a faster human performance. Show you here the combination now of reinforcement learning from human feedback with force sampling, beam search methodology. Let's start. The critique model produces here 28 structured critiques with highlighted quotes from the answer and associated comments. The reward model then evaluates each generated critique and assigns a specific score based on predefined criteria that likely include relevance, accuracy, and maybe comprehensiveness. Then we have our force sampling beam search that uses now a constrained sampling technique to generate and select the best critiques based on a particular formula. And in this formula we have as a dominant term, of course, here the score of the reward model. But since we want to have this as an open-ended model, we also have additional terms like the length modifier and the number of the highlights. And then OpenAI performed a lot of experiments to find here the optimal balance for these open-ended problems. And today, by default, the Critique GPT configuration that uses now both the reinforcement learning by human feedback and the force sampling beam search is now generating critiques with about 4 highlights on average. There you have the details. For my green grasshopper, if you want how to do now the training of the reward model, here's some basic information. But now to the main message that OpenAI gives us here. So we find that the resulting GPT-based critique model, this is a Critique GPT-4 for example, outperforms now representative humans chosen from a sample of Python developers at challenging here the bug detection task. So they say now, after we have this specifically tuned Critique GPT that was aligned here in reinforcement learning by human feedback on one particular task to find here the bugs that were inserted here in the code, now this specifically trained Critique GPT outperforms a vanilla ChatGPT. Okay, might not be that surprise, but they also say, hey, but if we compare it now to a sample of humans that we've chosen from a set of humans that know Python, that have, I think, 5 years of experience with Python, and you compare this to the performance of the humans, you see our Critique GPT system is now so much better to an average Python programmer. Well, this is now in contradiction to what I showed you with hallucination, but of course we understand that for a profit company, you of course want to reduce the most expensive cost factors, and you're not gonna believe it, it is still the human. So it is clear where this trend is heading to, but I think interesting by OpenAI to have this development. And they argue why they focus on code, solving the alignment problem. Of course, they have a problem that in today's LLMs, you have buggy or insecure code written by the LLMs, which can easily comprise here the production systems. And of course, code is an objective domain. There is that the code works, yes or no. Great. Now, you know, there's another main insight hidden in this article, and I would like to share this with you. Have a look at this sentence. I almost did not notice this sentence. It tells us here that OpenAI found it allows us to natively estimate the amount of additional pre-training compute that would be needed to achieve the same performance as CriticGPT, but in the reinforcement learning version only, without additional data or modification to the ChatGPT pipeline, is around 30 times. And you might say, second, you are telling me that an additional pre-training GPT-4 compute that I would need for the same performance as with the Critique GPT model would be a factor of 30 times? Now, this is fascinating. Because you remember in the training phases, we have here the pre-training phase, then we have the fine-tune phase, then we have the alignment phase with the reinforced learning from human feedback or DPO, whatever we have, and then we have finally our AI model. Great. And now OpenAI tells us, hey, if in the final state of the training, here at the reinforcement learning, for the compute that we need now with our new method of here, this reinforcement learning by human feedback plus the force sampling beam search methodology, let's put this at a factor 1 to achieve this here. If we do the training here at this level, this would be equivalent if we would do this at the very beginning of the pre-training phase with a factor of 30 times. So this here, the correction, the training is much more cost effective if we look at the compute costs. Which is interesting because think about what you are correcting here, the behavior of the system. But you know what is the primary imprint in the pre-training of an GPT system? It is also the reasoning functionality of a system. So if we now not ask here for the compute cost or the compute amount in time or whatever, if we ask now for functionality of the system, for an ability of the system like reasoning, you might say, okay, so I invest here to optimize my alignment phase by reinforcement learning with everything. And let's say this is here 1x that I need here addition to train this. What would it mean here for the pre-training phase? Because as we know from the literature up until now, we always read that the reasoning imprint is done in the pre-training phase and a little bit in the fine-tune phase. So this is now honestly an open question for me. Okay, the compute cost, if I do this here in the final layer of the training, this is here really important and cheap for the steering the behavior of the system. But is this also true if I go here for an internal ability of the system like reasoning? What would be the factor here? Is this valid at all if I look here at a reasonable or the reason function? Open question. But this leads me here to a completely different question. Hey, with all of this that we learned today from OpenAI, do we focus only on the symptoms? Are we sure that we are not willing to address here the root cause of the system. I mean, it's nice if we go to the alignment layer, and in the alignment layer we have an optimization. Absolutely beautiful, don't get me wrong. But maybe the alignment layer is only what it is, the alignment layer, and not the root cause if we do not trust our LLMs. So maybe I do in one of my next video here, maybe I try to address here the root cause of the system. But I think OpenAI showed us here a beautiful example of a Critique GPT we as normal AI researchers maybe will never use, because I will not hire 1,000 PhD students and pay them and give them the Critique GPT system to optimize their human performance. I don't think this is going to happen to me. So I don't need this particular new Critique GPT system by OpenAI. But the approach and the idea to develop now GPT system to help humans, to augment humans, to make humans more performance in their productivity, this is now a topic I think that in industry, this could be something that we should keep a close eye on. And if you subscribe, it would be great to see you in one of my next videos.